Hello and welcome to my channel. Guys, last week was kind of a tough week in the world of celebrity gossip. And whilst I have decided to have a different energy in this space, I wanted to comment on one situation in particular because I think it ties into how I started off here. For those of you who might be new to this space, you may not be familiar with a little video that I made way back in the day about the concept of pretty privilege. And I've since taken that video down because for whatever reason, it was the algorithm's favorite and it kept being promoted and kept being promoted. And that's what they never tell you about going viral on the internet, that even when you're over those feelings or you're like, you want to move on from that topic, the algorithm doesn't. And it'll keep feeding that to the internet at large. And so the same conversations will keep coming across your desk. YouTube has ways for you to silence certain notifications on certain videos, if you don't want to, let people talk about it, but I'm out. But the thing is people experience, I'm going to look up this term, but I learned this on TikTok. This guy was talking about how people experience content.
And this is a problem with the internet as a whole, but with TikTok in particular. It's that we experience it as simultaneity. Whether a video is 2 minutes old or 2 months old, you, the viewer, are experiencing it as if it is happening right now.
And even though you may have done it months, weeks ago, whenever the person stumbles upon it, they experience it in real time as if it's just happening. Like I said, you might be over it, but the algorithm's like, no. And there would be nothing wrong with that if I was like super proud of the sentiments shared in that video. In the video, I was saying I did not have pretty privilege, which is of course this idea that you're in the world and people are attracted to you, and so therefore they treat you better. And it is a lot of times those people are men, so there's things you can get from them, you can get them to do for you. I've made videos on here where I talked about when it comes to dating, do I think it's a good thing to be more attractive than everybody else around you? Yes, I do. I've talked about, I definitely in that video, I was like, it is a great thing to have and I don't have it. And I think a lot of people assumed, and they did come at me with this, and I had to diffuse this more times than I could even imagine. A lot of people assumed I was saying, well, guys, I'm ugly. And that's not what I was saying at all. I mean, I'm not, but it's the truth. I am not a person who has ever or will ever be able to tell you, oh, he just bought me a car, so I would hang out with him. Oh, he agreed to date me just because he wanted to take me around. I'm not arm candy. I'm not somebody you'll see in VIP unless I pay for myself to get up in there. I'm not, ever going to be like a professional, whatever athlete's girlfriend. Let's not play. Let's be for real. Okay, there's a certain level of attractiveness that you need to move in certain circles of society if you're a woman, and I don't have that. And it doesn't mean I think I'm an unattractive person. I just know what is not going to happen to me solely based on my looks. I want to say too, something else that happened after I released that video, and years have gone by, and I'm now literally almost a middle-aged woman at this point. I don't care anymore. I have seen just so much evidence that beauty is incredibly subjective, and you really can meet great people and be wined and dined and treated to extraordinary experiences no matter what you look like. I do think, again, in certain places in society, and we're going to get into that in this video, there's a certain standard, but it doesn't mean you'll never have those experiences. I still haven't had them, but it's not because of how I look. And I do want to stress that at the time, I was really feeling disgruntled and left out of a specific type of societal experience, but it isn't the only type of experience out there as far as like feeling valued or feeling worthy. And I want to stress that that's something you need to know about yourself. If you've ever struggled with that with that knowledge, with knowing that you don't necessarily have that appeal in certain areas of society. There are other ways to have extraordinary experiences, and if it's meant for you to have them, you will have them. So I just wanted to say that. And that was something that was really hard for people to understand, especially when I shared incidences and situations in my life where people have just out and out called me ugly, and just said, hey, you don't have this value, you don't have. And so because it was so hard for people to comprehend, it made releasing that video a sticky thing for me. Also in real life, people would argue with me, or women who had pretty privilege would talk to me like I was attacking them. And I couldn't understand that. I was like, just sit in your corner. I'll sit in my corner. What's the big deal? But the problem is that a lot of times it's very hard for people to hold space for somebody else's experience. And I do think that women in particular are very, very sensitive to jealousy from other women, or what they perceive to be jealousy from other women, which is why conversations about insecurities, comparisons, they tend to go so viral and be received so negatively by women every time they come up on social media. For example, last month, I know you guys probably saw this, but there was a whole conversation about the birthday dress. The two young girls who went to a birthday dinner, and one of them posted herself on her TikTok in her Mugler bodysuit. And she also posted a text that her friend had sent her that said, "Hey girl, I feel like you tried to outdress me on my birthday. And as a friend, I feel like that's not right." So this friend posts herself in her bodysuit. She's like, "Internet, you decide. Was I wrong for wearing this to her birthday?" Now, the problem was that once you give the internet even a morsel of something to talk about, they're going to get as many details as they can so they can get to the bottom of it, even if those details are wrong. So unfortunately, what ended up happening, if you missed this, was that you had a young girl who wasn't even involved, but who I guess was on the friends list, an Instagram or something, of the girl in the Mugler bodysuit. And she had also posted a picture of herself like in a parking lot or something like that. And she was wearing a dress that was not sexy. It was not, they didn't seem like they were going to the same event. And that's because they weren't at the same event. And what the internet did was they assumed that the girl in the more modest dress was the one who had sent this text, and they attacked her. They sent her all this hate. They were like, "You're insecure. This is why women don't, you shouldn't hang out with other women who aren't, showing out and putting it on. All my friends don't have." And it brought up this dialogue of, number one, should you be bringing your discourse that you have with your friends to social media? No, you should not. And I speak from experience. Number two, is it okay to come to your friends with that kind of thing? But with saying, "Hey, this is happening with you right now, and it makes me feel insecure and like you're not a good friend." Is it okay to even have those conversations with your friends? A lot of people said no. Some people said, well, the reason why some of y'all don't have real friends is because you can't have those kind of conversations, because you get nervous, because you feel like they're jealous of you, because you don't know how to handle that emotion. And some people said, well, I don't want to hang around jealous people at all. I don't want to deal with it. There were a lot of really, really nuanced conversations that happened because of a birthday outfit and the idea of insecurity and comparison among women. It's just a very, very tough situation. And I didn't want to be a part of the conversation publicly anymore. So I took my little video down and I silently ruminated. On the topic, and I've been ruminating on it for months. And I began to see that online people were talking about it again, but this time, instead of the environment that existed when I was talking about it, which were people like me saying, "I don't have this is how you're treated in the world when you're a woman and you're not attractive, blah, blah, blah." The conversation went from people sharing those experiences to women specifically that do have that privilege sharing their experiences, and they were complaining. They were not speaking from a place of, "Oh my God, this is wonderful, this is amazing," because that was a phase too. The pretty privileged conversation has gone through many phases online, right? It went from, "Oh, we don't have it and this sucks," to "We do have it and it's amazing," to this was one of my favorite chapters. What is it like having a friend who is a Miami 10, a LA 10, a New York 10? I don't know if y'all caught that one, but that was a phase. And now it was women saying, "Actually, this sucks." And they had been speaking up from the beginning, but I and others had been ignoring them because it was like, okay, yeah, and it sucks to get $1 million too. Get over yourself. But sometimes it does suck to get $1 million. Anytime you have an elevated visibility in a specific social group, you can attract great opportunities, but you can also attract some really terrible and toxic ones as well, especially when you're a woman operating in a patriarchal society, and that extra visibility that you have is due to what you look like. When I made that video, there were a lot of voices out there who said this isn't all it's cracked up to be. And once again, I was like, I don't believe you. Like, I think it's great. I would, let me live that life for a day. But when the news came out about Diddy and Cassie, I was convicted and felt like I had to revisit this topic, because I do think a lot when you have someone like me who's hating from outside the club, can't even get in. What I forgot is that when you are in a society and you are seen, you have an elevated visibility as a woman, it's because of how you look. What you will attract is, yes, sure, you know, men who want, but you're usually attracting men who are hoarders, who are predatory, who want to use and control you to support their idea of what their status is in whatever societal group they belong in. There are so many Cassies out there who from the outside, it looks like, oh, she's got it made. She's a gorgeous girl, and look at this rich man, and he's paying her rent, probably paying for her family to live. She ain't gotta, ever pay for her vacations. He's always sending her on vacation. All she has to do is be beautiful and be around him and lift his spirits and be his peace. But meanwhile, they are fighting a predator. They are fighting a man who means them no well, who doesn't want to invest in their life and who they are, who just wants to use and keep and hoard them for whatever purpose that he sees fit. That sounds like a nightmare. And I think a lot of women who are out there that do have, that elevated visibility, they are 10s, LA, New York, Miami 10s. I think there's probably more than one situation where they've run into a Diddy-like character. Now, I want to say this too. I had no idea how evil he was. No idea. I had no idea. And I tend to be a person who, when people are talking about like the Hollywood elites and how evil and this and that, I tend to be somebody who brushes it off. I'm not really, I don't like to feed into that. I don't like to, give that life. But he very much, the list of allegations is just long. And again, while they were dating, I was under the mindset, or I believed that she not had it made, because I couldn't see where the relationship was going. And then he kept having babies with other women. So I was like, what is this about? Like, what are you even doing? But I just felt like maybe that's what she wanted. Maybe she didn't want more. Maybe, and I don't know. It's something didn't quite sit right with me, but I never would have expected that. I never would have expected that reality. And I think there's probably, like I said, a lot of women out there who fit her description, who are in relationships like that with men who, yes, they're wealthy. Yes, they can pay for you. Yes, they can give you all these. And yes, the number one qualifier for why you deserve these things in their minds is because of how beautiful you are. But when you get into their worlds, you have to subjugate yourself to such evil and terrible mistreatment. What is the privilege in that? The Cassie and Diddy situation made me so happy to be invisible to certain types of men. And I want to make this distinction too. I remember back whenever I made the Pretty Privilege video, there was a conversation or a comment made that a woman having pretty privilege is the same thing as a man being a high value man. And I made a video at the time and I said, it's actually not, because men, when they're high value men, they are supposedly weighed on their entire character, right? The idea of a high value man, not the way some people pushed it at the time. What they were really pushing was being a man who was high earning. But a high value man is supposed to be someone who is, a leader of the pack, and he takes care of himself, and he's well groomed, and of course he has money, and he is he's reaching for his highest extent. And so he expects to be able to pick a woman who matches his level, right? But a lot of times when they were evaluating that woman in those specific circles where that conversation and that comparison was happening, her matching his status just had to do with what she looked like on the outside. She could be a deplorable human being on the inside. She could be illiterate. She could have been living in her car the day before because she didn't want to work. She could be, whatever. But as long as she was attractive on the outside, well, all of a sudden that matches up to him having to do all this other work to become a full-fledged individual. And at the time I was like, no, this is a false equivalency. This is not. And you can't see that because of how you're looking at the situation. And I want to revisit that for a second, because I do think that there is a such thing as a man having high value. I do think it can be, the value is subjective from person to person. And I think, and I don't like that term. I don't like high value man. I don't like high value woman because of how they were muddied and sullied during that specific time of the internet where they were being used all the time. But I do think that there are people within a dating market, within a mating market, that it's obvious, like, okay, that's a good catch. We'll use that term, right? This is a good catch. And I want to say that money and a man's ability to be a provider does make him, in a lot of ways, a good catch. If that's something that, if that's what you're looking for, and that's something that he has. And I think in any world, whether it's your partner, whether it's your friend, if they have the ability to connect you with certain social or, employment opportunities, they are a good catch. And I also think that a man can be a good catch, but not have a sinister, predatory character. Just because he's a powerful man or he's a well-esteemed man does not mean he's an evil man. When you have men who are so concerned with status, then that's sometimes where evil can sometimes seep in. Those men tend to also use and abuse people superficially, and a lot of times they're going to use and abuse women that they have lured in, with their riches and whatever. And so I'm happy to be completely invisible to those type of men, because no, I do not have the type of beauty that would elevate anybody's status. I just don't. Plus, I'm old now too. I'm out of it. I'm not trying to make light of what she went through. Listen, I'm still trying to process it, especially with stuff coming out now too about Kim Porter. It's a lot. But what the hell is happening in November? Like, what is going on? There's just so many things coming out. I have been very hard on myself this year about, and on a lot of people, and not hard, but I think a lot of creators have realized that we need to go in a bit of a vulnerability recession. Like we need to recess, assess, and then come back. And I think it comes from, back in 2020, there was this explosion or this need for creators or people who wanted to share and be real, after the saucy and glossy creators of the 2010s. And then I think what happened is a lot of people got bit in the butt. A lot of, people, I'm not the only one who dealt with kind of what I dealt with. And I've been seeing a lot of posts online where people are like, how can we still be authentic? How can we still be ourselves and also have a private life and not, exploit ourselves? And I've seen a couple of ideas from this, but I do also want to say there will always be space and a time to tell your complete, uncut, undiluted story about what you went through. There will always be space and a time, especially if you're not telling it because you're trying to keep the secret of somebody who hurts you and is continuing to cause hurt. There is no nobility in keeping an evil person's secrets. You may do it because you feel like if I say something, they're going to retaliate. If I do, and maybe so. But a lot of times when you speak up about what you've been through, the support that you get and the people that will crowd around you, it's going to be bigger than the person who is trying to hurt you. And a lot of times what people will do is they will hold that whole, well, you're not going to say anything. This will embarrass you over your head so that they can continue to hurt you in darkened spaces. Evil and mistreatment and predatory acts, it exists and it thrives in the dark. And so telling stories, talking about what happened, whether it's something you did, something that was done to you, something that you contributed to because you didn't know better, a lot of times that's our way of shining a light on something because you want it to stop. It needs to stop. And I think when it comes to him, Puff Daddy, something needs to stop. Now, I don't know what it is because I'm not clear on even who he is. But something is going on there. And I feel like it was beyond her time to speak up for various reasons. And so yes, I've been very anti putting your business out there, especially your darker things, because there are some things you need to keep with yourself. But there are some things that if you don't say something, the person is going to be able to continue. And you have to measure that and have that discernment within yourself. But when people ask, because they did ask this about her, they were like, why did it take so long? There are some people who have a way of getting others to hold their secrets. They have a way. And if you get like in their snare and in their grasp and in their circle, well, there you go. And we never know what he was telling her, what he was threatening her with. We don't know. But hopefully she really is free now and living a better life and living with somebody who evaluates her on more than just how she looks on the outside. What happened with Cassie and Diddy is, or should be, a cautionary tale to anybody that seeks out men just because of what they can provide financially. I don't care if he's generous. I don't care if he has a high status. Who is he as a person? What is his character? There is more to being a man of value than just what you make and what you can provide on a superficial level. To wrap this video up, I want to say that I do think the conversation about societal privilege is important, because I think it's important to be able to properly understand and assess where somebody's coming from. And also, we need to believe people. If somebody tells you, no matter what you see when you look at them, if they tell you, I've never had ... happen to me, and this has happened to me, I have had these experiences, believe them. I had a situation where I met somebody from the internet, and that never happens. But we both followed each other on a social media app at the time, on TikTok at the time, before I don't have TikTok anymore. But well, anyway, you guys know. But we met up and we went to eat together. And she was sitting at a bar when I came in, and she was at the bar, and this guy was talking to her, and he was being super friendly. And I was like, oh, sorry about the bartender. That's cool. So we went to go sit at the table, and I asked for a Moscow Mule, and it came in like I hate when people don't put it in the little copper cup. Like, put it in the copper cup. So we're sitting down, and I'm talking to her, and I'm drinking my Moscow Mule in the wrong cup. And the bartender comes over, and when he comes over, he completely turns his back to me and focuses all on her. Now, we're both paying customers. I'm drinking a drink he made, but he focuses all on her, and he only talks to her. And at the end, when he's about to walk away, I say, I make like a little silly comment about the fact that it's in the wrong cup. And he goes, oh yeah, sorry. You want something else? Like, so cold and so, like, for no reason. And then he walks away, and she goes, I get it. I get it now. I did not believe. She's like, well, it's not that I didn't believe you, but like, I just didn't think, because to me, you're objectively attractive. It's very clear that he was being nicer to me, because I was like, yeah. She's like, but it doesn't make sense to me. You are objectively attractive. I don't get. I said, well, it has been documented that men and women see attractiveness differently, and what women find attractive, especially even in other women, is not always what men are going to think is attractive. Also, she was a very pretty girl. I think sometimes people have a hard time seeing themselves. And so that could be another reason too, why the concept of pretty privilege is so awkward between friends, especially if you have one that like is clearly more desired than someone else. It's like, she doesn't want to be seen as being better than the other person. I mean, there's so much that can be said there. I'm honestly, I'm exhausted about, because I got into so many of those little conversations at that time in my life. But I was definitely picking that up from this girl, that she didn't necessarily see herself as being in any way better or more attractive or prettier than I was. But it was very clear that she was being treated this way by this man. And in that moment, it was very validating for her to say to me, I believe you. I can see now that you weren't just making it up. You're not just being dramatic, but that you have had experiences where men have acted. And I think a lot of women have. And a lot of people have had that. You might think that your friend or whomever you're with is the cutest person in the world, but there's a chance that they ran into somebody who did not value them just because of how they appeared superficially. So if they tell you that that's the truth, believe them. But also on the flip side, if they tell you, hey, I'm dating someone, and yeah, he pays for this and he does this and he does that, but he doesn't really value me as a person, don't write them off. Oh, girl, please, he's paying for dinner, he's doing. If they tell you that that's not a great arrangement, believe them. If they tell you that they have to deal with people being jealous, with people trying to mess with their job, when women started coming forward and talking about pretty privilege the way they were, I was like, oh, I do not know what it's like to be hated at work because I'm so attractive. I do not know. I do not know what it's like to be looked at as a threat. I don't know this world that you guys are talking about. I don't, But if they tell you that, believe them. I think it's a subject where so many different perspectives come into play. And they all have a seat at the table, but then at the same time, sometimes some voices need to quiet down, simmer down, so other people can speak up. And I think that this Diddy and Cassie situation, it's a really important time for women who have been in these predatory situations because of how they appear superficially to speak up and to honestly advise other women who could, because I can't advise you. I can't tell you, because I would not be in that situation. That's something that would not happen with me because I don't appeal to that kind of man. But there are people out there that do. Well, what I think if it's safe, I think it's time for them to tell their story. If I ever had a daughter or a young woman who was important to me, and I could tell like she's someone that she's an LA 10 or Miami 10 or whatever. She's someone that I would want her to see what happened with Cassie and Diddy. And I would want her to be, so I don't care what he offers you. If his character is not good, you do not have to put up with that. No. All right. I know that this video was kind of all over the place, but oh well, like the light behind me, that's where I am right now mentally. And I'm sure you guys have opinions about one of these many topics I talked about here today. Please feel free to share them in the description box below or in the comment box below. And as always, thank you for watching.